Hi, everyone, and welcome into Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name is Josh Albrecht, and if you are listening to us on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network, you're doing so for the first time, and welcome. This has been a podcast, a show that has existed for over a year, that has been on YouTube and Spotify and wherever else you may get your podcasts through Not Done Yet Media. And we are very excited to have it now be also on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. If you're going, I don't know who Josh Albrecht is, well, then you should also be watching or listening to the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Inside Wisconsin Sports with Trevor and Josh. That's the same guy. I'm the Josh there, and I'm the Josh here. And I'm very excited that this show is now also on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. And I'd like to introduce you, for the new audience, to my co-host, a good friend of mine. His name is John Taylor. John, welcome to the radio.
Hello, radio airwaves in Milwaukee. It's nice to be here, Josh. You know, we haven't recorded in a little while as we got set up and excited for this new format. So honestly, there's been a lot to talk about in terms of, Packers, Bucks, maybe a little Brewers as they approach the offseason. So, just excited to keep on keeping the conversation going. So this is awesome.
A lot to discuss. I mean, a ton to discuss. But before we get in to the sports of the episode, why don't you fill people in a little bit about your background on your fandom, kind of where you are, because I'm here, local. You are not, but you were. So tell a little bit about your story.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you and I have been friends for about 20 plus years at this point. So
Yep.
I did grow up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I moved out into West Dallas, but strong ties in Milwaukee until I moved away about 10 years ago. My fandom is I grew up like I think a lot of people in Wisconsin, especially in the 90s, really kind of only caring about the Packers. I became very Packers obsessed. And as I just got into the sports media landscape and consuming more media and content, having Giannis helped, and working at Miller Park was also formative to my sports experience. I'm lumping it up basically just to say that I love Wisconsin sports. I love the market that we are. I love that we're always an underdog story. It makes it really easy to root for. And, it's something I definitely keep up with, even being on the West Coast. There's a ton of Packers fans, some Bucks fans. And when I see a few Brewers hats at the farmers market on Sundays, I get very excited in the summer. So, I think Wisconsin sports is a cult in that way because, we may not be the largest, but we are mighty in our fandom. So it's fun to be a part of it. And so this has been a great way for me to, just keep invested. I was thinking about all this stuff alone. And so obviously over the past year, getting a chance to talk about it with you, I get to nerd out about some of the stats that I like. And, admittedly, I'm a little more pragmatic than you are. So, we balance each other pretty well. So excited to just kind of keep exploring that dynamic,
So one thing, if you're listening to this, one of the reasons why I asked John to do the podcast, you guys, if you listen to me weekdays in the morning, I'm a very emotional sports fan. I don't usually get into the X's and O's. John is much better at that stuff, so I think that there's a good balance if you're looking to get both sides of the story, instead of just the emotional side, but also sometimes the details that need to be brought into the conversation as well to back it up. All right, now the name of the show. Name of the show is Don't Tell Me How to Fan. You've absolutely heard me say that before. It's 100% how I feel, because being a fan of sports is emotion. It's an emotional investment. Sometimes it's also a financial investment, but it is an emotional investment. And I don't think it's fair that anyone can tell someone else how they should fan. Well, you should feel a certain way. No, I'm invested in these sports teams the same as you are. I'm allowed to feel the way that I am. Do not tell me how to fan. And so that's where the name of the show came, and kind of what we've embraced the way that we do the show. And you'll hear us a few times even say, like, I'm not trying to tell you how to fan, but, and then go through it. And there is a ton of stuff to talk about, and it's crazy that for our first episode on air and our first episode back on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and the rest of those, the YouTube channel, of course, as well, you can find us at Not Done Yet Media on YouTube. or just search Don't Tell Me How to Fan, and you'll find us there as well. Biggest thing at the time of us recording this, the news breaks. It's been a crazy 24 hours, essentially, for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bucks fans. Stories come out based on Giannis going through and scrubbing his social media pages. So essentially, it took it down to 2021. There was a post with like remembering Kobe, the championship, and like the NBA Cup, and then maybe a few other things. But I mean, he got rid of, I would say, 98% of the stuff that was on his social media, and that had everyone freaking out.
Yes. The
And
Twitter detectives were out in full force trying to figure out when it happened. The timeline is still a little blurry.
yeah,
It's turned into quite the witch or the manhunt to try to figure out when this happened, why this happened, what's going on.
and the thing is that anyone that's been a fan of the Bucks or a fan of Giannis are seeing this, and at least from where I'm sitting, you're just rolling your eyes because you're going, okay, well, here we go again. National reporters, national media are going to make a huge story about this, like they always have, whether it be Shams or Windhorst or people we don't even know about, someone that's just bought a blue check mark and is trying to make a name for themselves. All are creating graphics saying breaking news, Giannis this, Giannis that, which if we as Bucks fans hadn't been dealing with those type of situations for the last what 6-7 years,
10.
maybe it would have been, maybe it would have felt different when we did see those. But at least from where I'm sitting and where I'm fanning, I was like, yeah, yeah, of course you're going to do that. You've always done that. You did that all off season. You do it every off season. It's become a tradition in Milwaukee as a Bucks fan of seeing what BS story about Giannis wanting out is being reported today. And so I personally, John, I didn't really buy in initially to any of the reports based on just the social media scrubbing. Did you take that differently, knowing that it came after the Washington loss, that was brutal, and just kind of the way that that ended, and the fact that he did this social media scrub during the season?
I will say, I didn't. I wouldn't say I put much weight in the scrubbing. Obviously, some more recent events make things a little hazier and less exciting as a Bucks fan. But I will say, um, you'd be lying to yourself if you didn't realize how dire the Bucks' ability is now officially to keep that competitive window open. That is the definitive thing we've always heard Giannis say is, I want to stay in Milwaukee as long as this team can win championships. And I think between all the trades, the lack of hitting on draft picks, contract maneuvers and waves and sign in trades and stretches, like all of this is the Bucks have squeezed almost every ounce of blood from this stone. And I just don't know what other moves they can make. Obviously, once December 15th hits and like players become trade eligible again, I think I am interested to see what other kind of moves the Bucks can do, and we can discuss that on next week's episode as we're even closer. But I just want to say that I'm not saying where there's smoke, there's fire, but where there's smoke, and that definitely can turn into fire. And this is the first time this year where I go, oh, this might not be an outside agenda trying to exert their will on the smallest market in the NBA.
Sure. So, I had a lot of people that were, when this, the social media news broke, that were saying, no, Josh, this is different. And I just sat there going, I refuse to let myself get to that point. When it happens, then I will react.
Yeah.
But it's totally how many times am I going to be told, worried, and then Giannis is still there? And part of me also felt, as someone who loves Giannis and is just a super fan of Giannis, has he not earned any respect in that category of not buying what the media says and just waiting to hear it from him if there is something? And I know there are arguments against it, that he's had opportunities to squash rumors, but that's not his job. It's
Yeah.
not his
He
job to
also
crush him. It's his job
totally.
to score points in a basketball game.
Yeah.
You
He also
know?
squashes any leverage. If he goes to the Bucks ownership, organization, Horst, and says, "Hey, I'm here for the long haul," then the Bucks get significantly less aggressive in these decisions to try to field a competitive roster. So from a ability to win championship standpoint, he has to apply this pressure. And I think he'd be a bad like captain of the team, leader of this team, leader of this franchise by allowing them to get off scotch free by just making parallel or less than moves in an effort to think of the future as opposed to going all in. Because Giannis is not the type of player that you can build down the road with anymore. He's 33.
Mhm.
He's a little sad foreshadowing. He's way more injury prone. There's his game might not age well. So you need to win right now with Giannis, or you can't fault Giannis for wanting to go somewhere else to win right now. Because the truth is, I don't know how long he's going to be able to play the way he plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a
Or
sad
or
reality.
if
So
he and there are more reasons than just his overall health that put the way that he plays in question.
yeah.
I do think that it's interesting, and we'll get to this a little bit in the next segment as well. But just talking about all of this from the Bucks perspective, a lot of us have been just focusing on it from the Giannis perspective, but there's a lot of interesting points from the Bucks perspective as well, and I want to get to that, and we will in the next segment. But to just kind of final thoughts, like so, if you keep going with this with Giannis, then you go past the initial reports, then there are more reports that come out from Brian Windhorst saying, guys, I don't know why this is a thing. I told you that he wanted to be a Knick. All of this happened over the summer. Then Shams comes out and says Giannis and his agent have asked for meetings with the Bucks to have a discussion to see is staying with the Bucks the right move for him and the organization, making it really seem like I'm not demanding a trade. We're just going to have discussions of making sure that this is in the best interest of both parties to continue down this road. I find that very interesting because that's a total PR move in my mind from the Giannis camp. The Bucks are well aware that they have Giannis. As long they do not want to be the bad guy that says, "No, we said we're moving on from Giannis." They want to be the ones that say, "Giannis was done with us. We did everything we could for him, and he still said we're moving on." And
Well, the
so,
truth too is, I don't mean to hop in too
yeah,
aggressively here, but the truth is, like, the Bucks will never move on from Giannis because even if they remain to play in team, he's the Euro market for basketball is so huge. He is like what? One of like the top 5 like biggest
yeah,
selling jerseys. Like the Bucks organization profits off Giannis if he stays in Milwaukee, even if his play isn't producing winning basketball. So they're never going to move. This is purely a soft launch of Giannis. And ultimately, all the Bucks can do is try to actually make roster moves that make them more competitive to keep him around. This feels like Giannis saying, "Hey, I need to hear a plan because this plan isn't working." And obviously, we'll touch more on that in the next segment, but that Wizards loss was unacceptable.
mhm.
And their play has been unacceptable. And whether he was around or not, this team needs to be better around him, period.
That's very true. So when we come back on the other side of the break, we will talk about this Bucks team, what the Bucks did right, what the Bucks need to change, and everything about this Giannis situation from the Bucks perspective. We are talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis situation right now. If you're just tuning in, we are very, very excited to not only be on YouTube through Don't Tell Me, through Not Done Yet Media, but also now on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Um, and we were talking about kind of everything and how it played out from Giannis's camp. But on the Bucks side, John, I think that if you take a step back, I don't really know how you fault the Bucks on over this run, especially since the championship, since 2021. But even before that, like getting Drew Holiday and adding him to the team, and then continuing to do these things, which we have. I mean, let me tell you, this is going to make a hell of a book someday. But the rumors of what Giannis was asking for or in control of, to those decisions, to what came from Horst in the front office, and those decisions. But the way that this team has continued to make changes to appease Giannis, to keep him here, keep him happy, and try to keep this team competitive, I think they did a hell of a job. I understand that the Bucks and the NBA, it's a different situation than the Brewers, right? We're very used to in Wisconsin sports of kind of looking at things of, well, small market teams can't do extended runs because we don't have the money to pay players. Obviously, salary caps and things make that a little bit easier, but there are luxury taxes and things of that nature. And I feel like the Bucks have done a pretty damn good job overall of giving them those chances. My biggest takeaway from this is I don't think that fans are really realizing just how unlucky the organization was through these attempts. First of all, it will always kill me that the big three, Holiday, Giannis, and Middleton, never got another full shot in the playoffs. Someone always went down with an injury. The injury bug was there. And then they shipped off Drew. They brought in Dame. It just didn't work. The Giannis Dame thing, it just didn't work. Then Dame got hurt. Then he moved on. Now you bring in Miles Turner. That hasn't seemed to really work either. It's just things that they're making the effort. They made the effort, but it's just not yielding results. And I don't really know that that's the Bucks' fault.
Yeah, I don't even know if fault's the right word. Like I think this is like I think I mentioned in the previous segment. Like this is the first time the Bucks just don't have any more cards up their sleeves. I think they played all the right sleeves, like all the right cards up your sleeve, or whatever that expression is. I think like you highlighted, it's like you make that trade for Dame 10 out of 10 times, knowing that it limits you defensively, but the offensive firepower should counteract that. However, it should. You didn't even mention Chris Middleton kind of being barely available for those 2 years too in different spurts. And I love Chris, but it's like they didn't do anything wrong, but they didn't also do enough right for it to really be something that I think can be cashed in good favor or goodwill. And I think that's
what would you have had them do different?
Nothing. I don't. The things that would have needed to change have nothing to do with the Bucks organization. They just straight up needed to win another championship. I think they made the right move. They just didn't produce the outcomes. And I guess the only thing I would that's not true. We're talking about players. The thing I would have done differently is I would not have ever hired Adrian Griffin. I think that was a directive. There's reports that Giannis was like, I don't want Nick Nurse, anyone but that. But I think it's like very obvious that Kenny Atkinson would have been a better choice. He was like a candidate. It was a bad year, but with back-to-back bounces, you had to let Mike Budenholzer go. Like there's a lot of things, but the coaching stuff has not worked. I understand Doc is like a galvanizing force, but he's not a great coach. And you're seeing that in their play with or without Giannis. And I think that's the failure of the organization. They put themselves in a position by playing three coaches, like over $30 million a year a piece, or in total a piece. And they can't pivot off Doc. So they're just kind of stuck sinking with this captain. I mean, I could see a world, even if Giannis likes Doc, like that's the move. If you want to show Giannis until before the trade deadline that this isn't working, you got to cut bait with Doc or Buckner, his like lead assistant. Like, I don't know what Darvin Ham becoming your interim head coach does, but you got to kind of signal to everyone, I think including even the fan base, that you understand that right now, the current roadmap or blueprint for this team is barely a play-in, and that's not good enough for a guy like Giannis. It just straight up isn't.
No.
Specifically, when you talk about their lack of rebounding, they're shooting with some of the best efficiency in the league. However, opposing teams, they have 10 or 15 more possessions, either due to really sloppy turnovers. And I know missing Kevin Porter Jr. hurts that, but at the end of the day, it's just like sloppy, non-fundamental, non-energetic basketball that's happening. And what's even worse is that like, Giannis did not have a great game against the Wizards either. So to have this report come out after maybe one of Giannis's worst game in the regular season as a Buck in I don't know how long, like, it's just all bad timing. And it's just like, I don't think it's so far gone, but I think there's frustrations on all sides. And I don't really care to put any blame on anyone, I guess, because ultimately, like, this is just where we're at. When you try to push your chips in, like I said in the first segment, like, you really constrict your moves. You become way more rigid, way less flexible. And so I don't know what their plan is, but I don't blame the Bucks. They just something needs to give. And
Something
I
needs to
hope
give.
it's not Giannis, but something needs to give.
All right, let me ask you a few questions. First, do you think there's any chance, as we heard at the end or before the game on Wednesday, kind of which we were all kind of awkwardly waiting for the game after all this news breaks, knowing, hey, Giannis and the Bucks are going to play a basketball game tonight in Milwaukee. Um, do you
Against
think?
the number
And
one seed in the East.
correct. Do you think that
Yeah.
when Doc Rivers he went on record, he answered the question. He said, "The only source I listen to is the source," talking about Giannis. And Giannis loves Milwaukee. He has never asked for a trade. He still has never asked for a trade. Do you think, do you buy at all what Doc is saying, or that in this case, that this social media push that happened this week, is indeed another false narrative that just gained a lot more traction because of that loss in against Washington, or is Doc full of it and this is a valid argument and a real situation?
Yeah, it's not compelling radio. I think both are full of it and both are maybe telling the truth. I think there's a gray area where I think Giannis might not ask, but his agent definitely can speak on his behalf, saying that he's unhappy with current um, situations. I mean, Doc is just not going to come out and say, "Yeah, Giannis is unhappy." Like,
Right.
there is a level, like, he said the one thing he can say, and anything else would be malpractice.
Well,
So
he could have said the classic coach speak of, my job isn't to worry about that. My job is to make sure that our players are ready to go and give us the best shot to win tonight and to win tomorrow, and focus on what happens on the basketball court. The things that happen behind the scenes and what you guys talk about, those aren't things that I'm worrying about right now. I have a team to run, blah, 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 blah. I mean,
yeah,
that's what coaches do in these situations, whether it be about them or about players. They sometimes, and I would say the majority of the times, that's how they respond. It is not usually, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I'm going
mhm,
to tell you that y'all are wrong,
yeah.
which is what he did. That's what Doc did.
Yeah, Doc's an interesting guy. Obviously, he's always been very candid. He has a long history of throwing his players under the bus, and so it's like, yeah, he's definitely significantly more candid than your average head coach. Um, I don't know. Like I said, could he have said that? Sure, but you're also trying to keep a locker room together, and I think trying to just, like, quiet the noise as best as you can from the outside, and hopefully that helps isolate, and insulate the sound from inside the room, I think would be better. At the end of the day, like I said, right now, I hope Giannis doesn't ask for a trade. If he does, I don't blame him. The Bucks need to do everything they can to, and we can talk more trades, but, like, they got to get a small forward in here who can shoot the basketball and actually play competitive defense, because right now Kuz at the three kind of works. It's a little big for my taste. The bench lineups are terrible.
Mhm.
They just need another guy uh, who can actually score the basketball, because Bobby's been disappointing. Cole Anthony had flashes in the beginning of the season. He's been very disappointing. Like, when Gary Harris right now has been, like, your most effective free agent signing, one that includes Miles Turner, that's a problem.
Yeah.
When a guy who historically hunted matchups in Indiana, this is Miles Turner, is not doing that in Milwaukee, that's a coaching failure. So it's like, there are levers to pull, but do any of them, you know, open so much that it keeps Giannis here? I don't know. I don't know. But I'll promise you, I won't tell you how to fan, but I will tell myself to not lose sleep over it, because I've had a fantastic how many years with Giannis. I hope he stays a Buck forever, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not blind to, this is a grim situation we find ourselves in,
Yep.
and we knew that going into the season. The fact that he stayed is awesome, but there was always a potential of this being how it shook out, and that's where we're at, sadly.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, and I've really also kind of just accepted that whatever's going to happen with Giannis will happen with Giannis. And should he be traded or demand a trade or just walk away, whatever happens, I will face that when it actually happens. And in the
Yeah,
meantime, I'm just going to be really appreciative that Giannis is still wearing a Bucks uniform and go
totally.
from there. Also, very
From
big
one,
news.
yeah,
Yes.
from one MVP to a future MVP.
Ooh, I like it. It's Bears week. Packers
Packers talk.
Bears.
Yep.
It's happening tomorrow at the time that this will air on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Obviously, this time in comparison to last year, the year before that, either before that and that and that and that, this time this rivalry is all sorts of fired up because both teams are good and both teams have something to really play for in comparison to this just being quote unquote the Bears Super Bowl. They have higher aspirations this year and higher expectations, at least for the Packers, going into this game. Before we get into what those teams are going to have to look forward to and kind of the rivalry, which we'll do in the next segment, Packers had a huge win on Thanksgiving against the Lions. And I really think that anytime you can say this is the biggest game of the season and they win that game, it allows you to say the next game is the biggest game of the season. That means your team is doing something right. And being able to start that on Thanksgiving in Detroit was huge. Absolutely huge for this team.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I've said this to anybody who will listen to me talk about the Packers. If the Packers play the way they did against the Lions, they can win out the rest of the season and make big noise. We saw Matt LaFleur flip the switch and say, I'm playing a team that we can't just play to not lose. We need to play to win. And I just think this team is more talented and they're getting guys back and guys are stepping up. Ultimately, the caliber and their play is translating to better football. And I just want to see Matt LaFleur continue to actually live that all gas, no brakes comments he made, which is not how they won against the Vikings or lost against the Browns, So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a different Matt LaFleur. I think it did raise some question marks on which Matt LaFleur and what scheme and coaching mentality we're going to get as the Packers welcome the Bears to Lambeau Field. But I'm very excited to break it all down and talk about what you, John, and what I think are going to happen on Sunday at Lambeau Field. We shifted from Giannis and the Bucks over to the Packers. Huge week for them. Packers, Bears. Usually, when we say huge week, it's just because it's the rivalry and it's the history, and those are the things you're looking at. That's not the case this time around, and it's very interesting to kind of, as a Packers fan, kind of focus in on that and change the mindset going into this game, because I feel like any fear that I would have as a Packers fan would just be bragging rights of, oh God, I don't want to listen to Bears fans be like, oh, Packers are dead, Bears are back, we're doing blah, blah. But that's not even the concern now. There is so much riding on not only this game, but the second time, 2 games that the Packers and Bears will play each other. Obviously, this being the first, but a lot more, for some reason, it seems like, riding on this game than the second time that the Packers and Bears will meet, which will be in Chicago in a couple of weeks. Talk to me about where you're at as a fan and how you're approaching Packers Bears with 9-3 against 8-3-1.
Yeah. Where am I at? I am at the spot where the Packers' expectations are deep playoff pushes. And my thoughts on this game are less about the Bears rivalry. And the fact is, there is the book was out on the Packers last year that they couldn't win against good teams. This is a good team. I think the Bears are fraudulent in a lot of ways, a la like the last year's Vikings and even the 2021 Green Bay Packers, where the point differential stinks. They're very opportunistic on defense. Their quarterback is playing pretty inconsistent, but they're finding ways to win, right? That is Bears football right now. And we can be, I'm impressed and annoyed at how good Caleb Williams seems to be getting is the key word, getting better under Ben Johnson, but he still misses a lot of throws he shouldn't. what he's really gotten good at is showing you why, when he's elusive and off schedule, he can make a lot of incredible plays with his arm talent. So I am. The season's not over if the Packers lose this game. The season is more over if they lose this game and the game at Chicago. That's kind of where I'm at, where we've between the Lions game and you're kind of seeing stuff against the Giants. And obviously they finally took care of business and just beat a bad Vikings team, like straight up. You know, when you look at like the defense is playing great and has been playing elite this whole time. The offense has been letting them down for the first time in I don't know how long. Dontavian Wicks seems to be healthy. Christian Watson has come back and has been a revelation, obviously. You know, there's other things too. I'm just going to dive into it. Anthony Belton at right guard has, while not been fantastic, Jordan Morgan swapping reps hasn't been the answer. Yeah. Sean Ryan is not as good of a football player as Elton Jenkins, but he sure seems to want it a lot more than Elton did before we lost him to IR, which is terrible. So I'll just say this. The Packers are still a Super Bowl caliber team. They are still maybe the most top to bottom talented team roster wise in the entire NFC. And the Packers need to start matching that talent with consistency. And that is the difference between a young team that can be good and just a good team. It's your ability to be good all the time. And I'm thinking and hoping that we're rounding that corner as we get a lot of our core pieces back. Because we lost, obviously, 2 very important pieces. I guess 3 now, thanks to the Lions game between Tucker Kraft, Elton Jenkins, and obviously now Devontae Wyatt being out for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So
Wyatt was the biggest one for me, just based on what we saw the Bears do against the Eagles and running all over them. And I want and not having Wyatt there. And then, I mean, you just hear like some of the words like Micah Parsons saying we have to find a way to replace an irreplaceable piece of this team. You know, that's okay. You know, yeah. I mean, obviously that's Micah being a good teammate, but I think there's truth to that. I really do.
Why you compound that with Devontae Wyatt ability to affect the interior like penetration from the defensive side. I mean, he's great at that. He's also a very good run stopping defensive tackle, like 3 tech. There was a lot of talk about maybe kicking Lucas Van Ness inside, but he's back in a walking boot. He's had a huge setback. I don't think he's going to play this game too. So they did sign a player off of the Giants practice squad. I think that's a depth piece. Obviously, Baron Sorrell. And I'm going to forget the other defensive tackle that they signed, you know, the undrafted player, Nazir Stackhouse. I mean, these are young guys. They just got to step up. Carl Brooks will be back. Colby Wooden put on weight, and I think he's been really great this year at anchoring the defense. But, I'll say this. They figured out a way to shut down Jahmyr Gibbs twice in the same season. And that seems a lot harder than dealing with the Bears.
You would think.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Here's the big thing that I've said, John. I've said the number one team standing in the way of the Packers is the Green Bay Packers.
100%.
They get out of their own way, and they just trust themselves. And you have maybe not as aggressive as Matt LaFleur was in Detroit, because that worked in Detroit. I don't think that's going to work every time, especially the times you win for 4th down. I'm not saying you should go for it never, but going for 3 for 3 on 4th downs every game is also unrealistic. So I do think that the only team that stands in the Packers' way is the Packers. I'm not worried about the Bears more than I am the Packers not playing the game that they need to. And I will say that I think it's a huge game because the conversation and the mindset for Packers fans post this game changes dramatically. It's either, all right, now the Packers are going to win the North. Now let's find out, are they going to be the number 1 seed, number 2 seed? Where are they going to fall? Or they lose to the Bears, and it's, all right, now it's going to take a lot of help, and we have to beat the Bears in Chicago to have any chance of winning the division. And now we're watching the 49ers, the Seahawks, what's happening in the West, and worrying about those wild card spots and the seeding and everything else that I don't want to deal with. And so that's why so much really rides on this game beyond just beating the Bears. Of you don't have to worry about all those things. You win the division. You win the division.
Yeah, we're just running out of games to not just execute. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? The Bears' strength of schedule is pretty easy to start the season, and that was a big thing. It's like, oh, they're fraudulent. They're going to get found out by better football teams. And then they put a hurting on the Eagles in a way I was not expecting. And that, as a Packers fan, it doesn't make me nervous. But it just, when you look at the greater landscape, the Eagles were supposed to be this like start of, hey, the Bears are going to start catching some L's, playing better teams. And it's like, listen, I'm not happy that Ben Johnson is their head coach, because the scariest thing that I see from them is they're fully bought into him as their leader. And I always thought he was some, X's and O's whiz kid offensive coordinator. And the hardest thing you see is these guys commanding a locker room and having the guys fully believe in your message. And boy, watching him rip his shirt off and lose his mind after that Thanksgiving or Black Friday game, that's not fun to watch as somebody who's gonna be in the same division of them for the next, however long he's their head coach. So that's the part that makes me nervous. It's just like, they seem more for real. Do I think them as a for real contender? I still think the Packers are better. I just do. You're not going to convince me otherwise. Because like you said, the Packers have beat the Packers either through mentality or execution. And we're seeing both clean up. There's like a small opportunity that Jaden Reed is back for this game. He was designated off of IR, which means his 21-day window to get back in. And they said that he would have went on the Lions if he could go. This game is going to be a game time decision as well. Like I said, you look at some other key players, like losing Tucker Kraft, losing Devontae Wyatt. That's bad. But we are also getting pieces in other places that might help us be more explosive. Getting Jaden Reed back, he's the ultimate zone beater.
Yeah.
That's what Tucker Kraft is doing. So it's like, it's not going to look like how we think it's going to look, but maybe we start running 4 wide receiver sets, which we haven't been doing. We've been living in jumbo, trying to protect and create a run game, but maybe that's some creativity. I trust Matt LaFleur. There has been so much conjecture this season about whether he should remain the head coach. And I'll say this, I don't know if you can find somebody better. And what he needs to do is work on his faults and be more self-scouting of his own shortcomings as a head coach.
He needs to be confident.
Yeah,
that's what needs to happen. He's not confident on the field, confident in himself. There have been way too many times this year where post-game pressers, we've heard him go, well, I mean, obviously, I wasn't sure, and then I ended up doing this, and it wasn't the right move, or, or even sometimes they've won, and he's like, yeah, I mean, we just got lucky there. I didn't really. What? That's the type of stuff, and we heard stuff after the Lions game of him coming out and saying, like, no, we knew that we were going to be more aggressive. We knew we were going to be this. And I feel like that translates to your players. If they can feel and know this is what coach is thinking, that's going to affect how they play. And if they're going, well, I don't know, is he going to stick with that? Is he going to change that? What's going to happen here? That's going to affect their play too. And so it's more to me than just straight leadership. It's about Matt LaFleur needs to buy in on Matt LaFleur, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I really think that's the case. And I think that if he can do that, this team will back it up and prove that they are that team that we saw against the Lions, that we saw against the Lions in week 1, this team that we know that they can be.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. They need to let Jordan Love in Toyotathon.
Yep.
Let her rip. I think what they really need to do is get the ball to start the game, and they need to go score. The easiest way to make sure that the Bears can't just pound the rock all game is by putting points on them quickly, forcing Caleb to throw, and then obviously limiting our turnovers, right? The Bears have the second best turnover differential in the entire league, number 1 in the NFC for sure. Maybe they are first. Either way,
I think they are first.
And we're like top 3 and not turning it over. So, unstoppable rock meet immovable boulder, and we'll find out. But I think if the Packers don't turn the ball over, this team is not good enough to keep pace. The Packers offense puts up points, even in games where we think they're bad. It's like the Eagles one was unacceptable, but every other one, they're still scoring plenty of points. They're doing enough. The defense is absolutely doing enough. So, we'll see. We can do a little prediction on the way out here if you want. I think the Packers win. I think the Packers win like 27-16. And I just think the Bears, I think the Bears are coming to a cold Lambeau in a division game where it's always harder. And I just think they need a lot of good breaks. And I think the Eagles aren't as good. There's just a lot. That's my prediction. We don't have to
No, I like it, and so I've been thinking a lot about where I'm sitting score prediction wise and analyzing things because there are two identities with these teams. The Packers has been they play to their competition and they don't leave a lot of room for error. And it doesn't matter if you're a good team or a bad team, it's going to be a close game. And we've seen them tie or lose to teams in games that they should have won, but they missed opportunities, they made mistakes, and then they lost those games. We've also seen them take advantage of opportunities in tougher games and then win those games. And so they're a team that keeps things close. The problem with that is that the Bears have been lights out at winning games that are close. They are not letting games that are close slip away. Their losses this year, they've gotten clobbered. Otherwise, they win the close games. So if the Packers keep everything close and the Bears win close games, that's a problem. So I'm looking at this and hoping that this outcome is more based like what it was against the Vikings, and that maybe the Packers are up by 3 and it is that close game, but then with like 5 or 6 minutes left in the game, they get that touchdown to go up by 2 scores. They go up by 10 and it kind of changes things, and then the defense does what this Packers defense does and the Packers end up winning by 10. So I'm going to go 27 because why would anyone predict anything less? I'm going to go Packers 27, Bears 17.
Yeah. Shout out Michael Parsons. I'll do it every single episode just because
Yeah,
he's the best.
he's a beast. Also,
Cool.
shout out to all of you who are joining us here on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network for the first time with Don't Tell Me How to Fan, and everyone that's watching and has enjoyed us on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. Thank you so much. Tune in next time because we're not done yet.